Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Robert Mitchell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a conquered territory. At 42, he commanded one of the region's most successful construction and development companies, Mitchell Holdings. His empire hadn't been built on kindness. Rob understood that weakness invited predators, and he'd learned that lesson early in the foster homes of his youth. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Mitchell, your wife called. She needs to speak with you urgently." Rob's jaw tightened. Lisa rarely called during business hours unless she wanted something expensive or had created some social crisis that required his reputation to clean up. He'd married her 8 years ago when her beauty and charm had masked what he now recognized as calculated manipulation. Back then, she'd been Lisa Thompson, a real estate agent who'd sold him his first commercial property. Their whirlwind romance had produced Tyler, the one pure thing in Rob's life. "Transfer her," he said, settling into his leather chair. "Rob, darling." Lisa's voice carried that honeyed tone she used when maneuvering. "I know this is sudden, but David Thornton passed away yesterday. The funeral is tomorrow, and I really think we should attend." David Thornton. The name hit Rob like a cold slap. Lisa's college boyfriend, the one she'd been completely over when they'd met. The one she'd occasionally mentioned with a wistful smile that had always irritated him more than he'd admitted. "We didn't know him," Rob said flatly. "I knew him, Rob. He was important to me once. Please, I need this. Tyler can come with us. It'll be good for him to understand death and grieving." Something in her voice, desperation masked as emotion, set off every alarm Rob's survival instincts had developed. Lisa rarely asked for anything this personal, especially involving her past. "Why now, Lisa? You haven't mentioned him in years." "His sister called me. She thought I should know." "Rob, please. This matters to me." Rob stared out at his city, remembering the last time someone had tried to manipulate him this obviously. That business partner had lost everything. His company, his reputation, his marriage. Rob didn't forgive betrayal, and he never forgot. "Fine," he said. "We'll go." That evening, Rob watched Tyler practice basketball in their driveway. At 8, the boy was already showing signs of the athleticism that would serve him well. Tyler had Lisa's delicate features, but something in his eyes reminded Rob of himself, a wariness that seemed premature for a child. "Dad, Mom says we're going to a funeral tomorrow," Tyler said, dribbling the ball absently. "That's right, buddy. Sometimes we have to do things that are hard because they matter to the people we love." Tyler nodded solemnly. "Was he Mom's friend?" "Once upon a time," Rob said, studying his son's face for any flicker of recognition at David's name. "There was none. Go wash up for dinner." Inside, Lisa moved around the kitchen with unusual energy, humming while she cooked, something she rarely did anymore. Her dark hair caught the light as she turned, and for a moment, Rob saw the woman who'd captivated him 9 years ago. Then she spoke. "I picked out Tyler's suit for tomorrow. The navy one you bought him for Christmas. Why are you so invested in making this perfect, Lisa?" She froze for just a heartbeat before turning with a bright smile. "I want to pay proper respects. David was a good man. Good enough that you've been in contact with his family. His sister looked me up on social media. We weren't close, but grief makes people reach out to their past, you know?" Rob nodded, filing away the lie. He'd built his success on reading people, and Lisa was broadcasting deception like a neon sign. Tomorrow's funeral would be interesting. Chapter 2. Buried Secrets. The drive to St. Matthew's Episcopal Church stretched 45 minutes through autumn countryside. Lisa sat rigid in the passenger seat, checking her makeup in the visor mirror for the 3rd time. In the back seat, Tyler played quietly with his handheld game, oblivious to the tension radiating from his mother. "Tell me about David," Rob said casually, navigating the winding road. Lisa's hands twisted in her lap. "We dated in college. He was gentle, kind, the sort of man who rescued stray cats and volunteered at soup kitchens. Sounds like a saint. Why didn't it work out?" "He wasn't ambitious enough. I wanted more from life than David could provide." She glanced at Rob. "I wanted someone strong, someone who could take care of business." Rob recognized the compliment as deflection. "What did he do for work?" "Last I heard, he was teaching high school biology. Never married, no kids. His sister mentioned he'd been battling depression for years." The church parking lot was surprisingly full for a Tuesday morning funeral. Rob noted the mix of vehicles, modest sedans, older pickup trucks, a few luxury cars that seemed out of place. He helped Tyler from the back seat, straightening the boy's tie. "Remember, we're here to show respect," he told Tyler. "Stay close and follow my lead." Inside, the church hummed with quiet conversation. Lisa immediately tensed, scanning the crowd with barely concealed anxiety. Rob caught her arm gently but firmly. "Second thoughts. No, I haven't seen some of these people in a long time." A woman approached them, mid-40s, with Lisa's bone structure but harder edges. "Lisa? Oh my God, Lisa Thompson." "It's Lisa Mitchell now," Lisa replied, forcing a smile. "Rob, this is Jenny Sinclair. We were roommates junior year." Jenny's gaze moved to Tyler, and something flickered across her face. Recognition? Surprise? "And this must be your son." "Tyler," Lisa said quickly. "He's 8. 8, Jenny repeated slowly. "How nice that you brought him. David would have. Well, he would have appreciated that." Rob caught the hesitation, filing it away with growing suspicion. They found seats in the middle section as the service began. The priest, Father Morrison, spoke warmly of David Thornton's gentle nature, his dedication to his students, his struggle with loneliness in recent years. "David never found his own family," the priest said, "but he poured his love into hundreds of students who knew him as a teacher, mentor, and friend." Rob watched Lisa throughout the service. She wept. Real tears, not the calculated variety he'd learned to recognize. Her grief seemed genuine, deeper than appropriate for a college boyfriend she'd supposedly forgotten. When the priest asked for memories, several former students spoke movingly about David's impact on their lives. Then Jenny Sinclair approached the podium. "I knew David through college friends," she began, her eyes finding Lisa in the crowd. "He was one of those rare people who loved completely, even when that love wasn't returned. David carried a torch for someone for years, long after she'd moved on. He never got over losing her, or losing the chance to know his." "Thank you, Jenny." Father Morrison interrupted gently. "Perhaps we should move to the final prayers." But Rob had heard enough. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Lisa's insistence on attending. Tyler's age. The way several people had stared at his son with recognition rather than polite interest. As they stood for the closing hymn, Rob's hand found Lisa's shoulder. To anyone watching, it would seem like comfort. Lisa knew better. She'd felt that grip before, when Rob's business smile hid deadly intent. "We need to talk," he whispered against her ear. "Soon." The burial was brief. Rob stood with Tyler at the graveside, watching his wife lay a single white rose on David Thornton's casket. Her lips moved in what might have been a prayer or an apology. Driving home, Tyler fell asleep in the back seat. Lisa stared out the window, tears still fresh on her cheeks. "Nice service," Rob said conversationally. "Yes." David would have been pleased. "A lot of people seem to know Tyler." Lisa's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "Just interesting how many people commented on him. For strangers, they seemed awfully familiar with our son. People are always drawn to children at funerals. It represents hope, continuity." Rob nodded, his businessman's mask firmly in place. But inside, cold fury was building like a storm front. He thought of the years he'd spent building a life with Lisa, providing for Tyler, believing in the fiction of their family. If his suspicions were correct, everything he'd built his happiness on was a lie. And Rob Mitchell didn't forgive lies. Chapter 3. The Truth Unveiled. The revelation came 3 days later, but not how Rob had expected. He'd spent the morning conducting his own investigation, using the private investigator his company kept on retainer for background checks. What he'd learned made him sick. David Thornton had died by suicide after years of depression, reportedly triggered by seeing photos of Lisa's family on social media. Bank records showed he'd been sending anonymous money orders to a children's savings account, Tyler's college fund that Lisa had claimed came from her investments. Rob was preparing to confront Lisa when his phone rang. Father Morrison's name appeared on the screen. "Mr. Mitchell? I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the funeral guest book. There's something I need to discuss with you privately." They met at a diner 20 minutes from Rob's office. Father Morrison looked haggard, older than his 60 years. "What I'm about to tell you violates several confidences," the priest began. "But David's death, it's weighing on me. He came to see me 2 weeks before he died." Rob's coffee grew cold as Father Morrison spoke. David had confessed his love affair with Lisa during her marriage to Rob. He'd been racked with guilt about Tyler's parentage, wanting to be part of his son's life, but respecting Lisa's insistence that Rob never know. The weight of the secret, combined with his isolation and depression, had become unbearable. He wanted to tell you himself, Father Morrison said. He thought you deserved to know. But Lisa threatened to disappear with Tyler if he said anything. She convinced him you'd take Tyler away from both of them. How long? Rob asked quietly. The affair lasted 6 months, starting about a year into your marriage. David broke it off when Lisa became pregnant, thinking the child was yours. It wasn't until Tyler was 3 that David realized. The timing, Rob finished. Tyler had been born exactly 9 months after Rob's business trip to Seattle, a trip that had lasted 3 weeks. Rob drove home in a haze of controlled rage. Everything made sense now. Lisa's insistence on natural childbirth with no paternity testing, her reluctance to have more children, the way she'd encouraged his long business trips during Tyler's early years. Even Tyler's recent questions about why he didn't look like his father. He found Lisa in their bedroom, packing Tyler's clothes for a weekend trip to her sister's. Going somewhere. She turned, startled. I thought Tyler and I would visit Sandra. He's been asking about his cousins. Funny timing. Right after David's funeral. Lisa's hand stilled on Tyler's shirt. What's that supposed to mean? Rob closed the bedroom door and turned the lock. Not to trap her. He wasn't that kind of man. But to ensure Tyler wouldn't accidentally overhear what was coming. It means I know, Lisa. About David. About Tyler. About 8 years of lies. The color drained from her face, but she lifted her chin defiantly. I don't know what you think you know. I know Tyler isn't my son. I know you were sleeping with David while married to me. I know David's been sending money for Tyler's college fund. And I know David killed himself because he couldn't live with the secret anymore. Lisa sank onto the bed, her composure crumbling. Rob, please. Let me explain. Explain what? That you've been playing house with another man's child while I built my life around being Tyler's father? That you let me fall in love with a boy who isn't mine while his real father suffered in silence? Tyler loves you, Lisa whispered. You're the only father he's ever known. And whose choice was that? Rob's voice remained deadly calm, but his eyes burned with rage. You made that decision for all of us. David, me, Tyler, we were all just pieces in your game. Lisa began to cry. I was scared. When I realized I was pregnant, and it might be David's. I panicked. You were so successful, so stable. David was still struggling with his teaching degree. I thought I was protecting everyone. You thought you were protecting yourself. Rob, please. We can work through this. Tyler needs you. I need you. Rob looked at his wife, really looked at her for what felt like the first time in years. She was beautiful, even in her desperation. But beauty couldn't hide the rod anymore. Pack your things, he said quietly. You and Tyler leave tonight. You can't just throw us out. This is Tyler's home too. Tyler is David Thornton's son. Maybe he should live in David's world, not mine. Lisa grabbed his arm. Rob, I'll do anything. We can have our own children. We can start over. Rob removed her hand gently but firmly. I don't start over, Lisa. I finish things. Something in his tone made her step back. She'd seen Rob destroy business rivals who'd tried to cheat him. She'd watched him systematically ruin a contractor who'd overcharged them on their first house. But she'd never thought that cold calculation would turn on her. What does that mean? Rob was already moving toward the door. It means you have 2 hours to pack what you need. Tyler's college fund, the real one I've been contributing to, stays with me until we sort out custody. The fake one David was funding can go with you. Custody? Rob, you can't be serious. Tyler doesn't know any of this. Tyler will know everything, Rob said. But first, you and I are going to have a longer conversation about how this plays out. And Lisa, he paused at the door. You're going to find out what happens when you betray someone who doesn't forgive. As he walked downstairs, Rob's mind was already working through the implications. Legal custody would be complicated. His name was on Tyler's birth certificate, but biology would matter in court. Financial assets would need protection. Lisa's reputation in their social circle would need adjustment. But those were details. The important thing was that Rob Mitchell had been betrayed, and betrayal always carried a price. He just needed to decide how much Lisa could afford to pay. Chapter 4. The Price of Deception. Lisa was gone when Rob returned from his emergency meeting with his attorney, taking Tyler and 2 suitcases to her sister Sandra's house across town. She'd left a letter on the kitchen counter, for pages of justifications and pleas that Rob fed directly into the fireplace without reading past the first paragraph. Marcus Webb, Rob's lawyer and one of his few genuine friends, had been blunt about the situation. Legally, you're Tyler's father until proven otherwise, Marcus had explained. But if Lisa pushes for a paternity test, things get complicated. You might owe child support for David's kid, depending on how the judge views your role as the presumed father. And if I push for the test, then you're opening a can of worms that might not go in your favor. Tyler's 8 years old. Some judges will prioritize his emotional well-being over biological truth, especially since you've been his father figure. Rob had sat in Marcus's office, staring out at the city lights, calculating angles. What if Lisa doesn't want to go to court? Then you negotiate. But Rob, Marcus leaned forward. I've known you 15 years. I can see that look in your eyes. Don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Anything that lands you in jail or costs you everything you've built. Now, alone in his house for the first time in 8 years, Rob poured himself a scotch and began planning. He wasn't interested in traditional divorce proceedings or custody battles. Those were civilized solutions to civilized problems. Lisa had declared war the moment she decided to build their marriage on a lie, and Rob intended to win. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tyler is asking for you. Please don't do this to him. Lisa. Rob deleted the message without responding. The next morning brought a call from Sandra, Lisa's sister. Rob, you need to come get your son. He's been crying all night asking when he's coming home. Tyler isn't my son, Sandra. I'm sure Lisa filled you in on the details. A pause. Jesus, Rob. He's 8 years old. He doesn't understand any of this. Then maybe his mother should have thought about that before she decided to lie to everyone for 8 years. Look, I know Lisa screwed up, but Tyler is David Thornton's son. Perhaps his father's family would be interested in meeting him. Rob hung up before Sandra could respond. Within an hour, his private investigator called with David's family information. 2 sisters, both married with children. Parents still alive, living in Florida. None of them knew about Tyler's existence. The investigator's report was thorough. David's family was working class, but stable. His sister Jenny, the woman from the funeral, lived just 30 minutes away and worked as a nurse. She'd never married, had no children of her own. Rob made the call that afternoon. Miss Sinclair? This is Robert Mitchell. We met at David's funeral. I think we need to talk. They met at the same diner where Father Morrison had delivered his bombshell. Jenny looked nervous, her hands trembling slightly as she ordered coffee. You know about Tyler, Rob said. It wasn't a question. Jenny nodded. David told me 3 years ago. He was wrestling with whether to contact you or Lisa. I told him to stay away, that nothing good could come from destroying a family. But you knew he was sending money. He felt guilty. He wanted to contribute something to Tyler's life, even if he couldn't be part of it. Rob studied her across the table. Jenny had David's gentle eyes, but harder lines around them. Life had taught her lessons her brother had never learned. Would you like to meet your nephew? Jenny's breath caught. Are you serious? Tyler's going to need family when this is over. His mother made choices that are going to have consequences. David's son deserves to know where he came from. What about Lisa? Lisa doesn't get a vote anymore. Rob's voice carried the weight of final judgment. She lost that right when she decided to build her life on lies. That evening, Rob called his accountant and his business manager. By morning, he'd liquidated several investments and moved money into accounts Lisa couldn't access. She'd been living off his success for 8 years, financing her comfortable life while David struggled on a teacher's salary and sent what little he could spare to support the son he couldn't claim. The balance was about to shift. Lisa called that night, her voice desperate. Rob, please. Tyler won't eat. He won't sleep. He just keeps asking when he's coming home. Tyler doesn't have a home with me anymore. You're punishing an innocent child for my mistakes. I'm correcting a lie you've been telling for 8 years. Tyler's father was David Thornton. His family would like to meet him. His family? Rob, you can't be serious. You're going to uproot Tyler's entire life because you're angry at me. I'm not angry, Lisa. Anger is temporary. What I feel is permanent. He hung up and poured another scotch, staring out at the city that had always made sense to him. In business, betrayal had consequences. Competitors who tried to undercut him lost contracts. Partners who lied found themselves bankrupt. Suppliers who cheated him never worked in the industry again. Lisa had apparently thought marriage operated under different rules. She was about to learn otherwise. Chapter 5, Gathering Storm. The subpoena arrived at Sandra's house on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a private process server who'd been instructed to be thorough and professional. Lisa called Rob within an hour, her voice shaking with barely controlled panic. A paternity test? Rob, you can't be serious. The court takes biological parentage seriously in custody matters, Rob replied calmly, reviewing quarterly reports at his office. I thought you'd want to establish the truth. You know the truth. Tyler is David's son. I admitted that. Admissions aren't legal documentation. The court requires scientific proof. What Rob didn't mention was that the paternity test was only one part of his broader strategy. While Lisa focused on the immediate crisis, Rob had been building a comprehensive case that would reshape every aspect of their lives. His private investigator had delivered a detailed timeline of Lisa's affair with David, complete with credit card records showing hotel visits and restaurant charges during Rob's business trips. More damaging were the social media posts Lisa had deleted but which existed in cached searches, photos of her and Tyler visiting locations near David's school, captions about old friends and second chances. But the most devastating evidence came from David's own journals, obtained through his sister Jenny. David had documented his relationship with Lisa meticulously, including his growing suspicions about Tyler's parentage and his anguish over the secret. The entries painted Lisa not as a confused young woman who'd made a mistake, but as a calculated manipulator who'd strung both men along while securing her own interests. I need to see Tyler, Rob said into the phone. What? No. He's already confused enough. Lisa, I'm not asking. The court order gives me supervised visitation rights pending the custody hearing. I'll be there Saturday at 10. Rob hung up before she could argue further. He'd deliberately structured the visitation to be supervised by Jenny Sinclair, whom the court had approved as a neutral third party. It would be Tyler's first meeting with his father's family, a meeting that would serve multiple purposes. Saturday morning found them at Riverside Park, Tyler running ahead to the playground while Rob and Jenny sat on a bench watching. The boy seemed smaller than Rob remembered, his usual energy dampened by the confusion of the past week. He's beautiful, Jenny said softly. He has David's eyes. And Lisa's stubborn streak, Rob observed as Tyler attempted to climb a structure clearly marked for older children. Tyler, come here for a minute, Rob called. The boy approached reluctantly, his face closed off in a way that reminded Rob painfully of himself at that age. Protective, wary, expecting disappointment. Tyler, this is Miss Jenny. She was David's sister. The man whose funeral we attended. Tyler studied Jenny with the serious consideration of a child trying to understand adult complications. Mom said he was her friend from school. He was, Jenny said gently. He was also a very good man who cared about you, even though you never got to meet him. Why didn't I meet him? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Rob found himself wondering how to explain adult deceptions to a child who still believed in fairness and truth. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that seem right at the time, but turn out to be mistakes, Rob said carefully. Your mother thought she was protecting everyone by keeping secrets. But secrets have a way of causing more problems than they solve. Tyler considered this with 8-year-old logic. Is that why I can't live at home anymore? You're not living at home because your mother and I need to figure out some important things about our family. It's not your fault, Tyler. None of this is your fault. The boy nodded solemnly, then looked at Jenny. Did David look like me? Jenny smiled, pulling out her phone to show photos of David as a child. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same dark hair, the same thoughtful expression, the same way of tilting his head when concentrating. He would have loved you, she said, more than anything in the world. After Tyler returned to the playground, Jenny turned to Rob. You're going to fight for custody, aren't you? I'm going to fight for the truth. Tyler deserves to know who he really is and where he comes from. And Lisa? Rob's expression hardened. Lisa made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. That evening, Rob received a call from Marcus Webb. Lisa's hired Jonathan Crenshaw. Rob felt a flicker of admiration despite himself. Crenshaw was expensive, ruthless, and very good at making problems disappear. Lisa was finally taking the situation seriously. What's his opening move? He's claiming you're using Tyler as a weapon to punish Lisa. Emotional abandonment of a child you've raised for 8 years. He's going to paint you as vindictive and unstable. Let him try. Rob moved to his home office, where he'd assembled files containing 8 years of careful documentation. I've got bank records showing every dollar I've spent on Tyler's education, medical care, and activities. I've got videos of every birthday party, every soccer game, every school event I attended while Lisa was running errands. If Crenshaw wants to discuss parental investment, I welcome the conversation. Rob, there's something else. Crenshaw filed a motion for emergency financial support. Lisa's claiming she's been financially dependent on you and can't afford basic living expenses. Interesting. Did he happen to mention the $200,000 she withdrew from our joint savings account 3 days before she moved out? Marcus paused. What $200,000? The money she moved to an account in Tyler's name that only she can access. My accountant flagged it yesterday. Apparently, Lisa's been planning her exit strategy longer than she let on. Rob heard papers shuffling on Marcus's end. You didn't mention this earlier. I wanted to see what story she'd tell first. Now I know. Forward the account information to Crenshaw with my compliments. Tell him his client forgot to mention her recent financial activities. After hanging up, Rob poured himself a drink and stood at his window looking out at the city lights. Lisa thought she was playing chess while he played checkers. She was about to discover that Rob Mitchell had been playing a different game entirely, one where he'd been anticipating her moves since the day he'd first suspected her lies. The real campaign was just beginning. Chapter 6. The Art of War. Lisa's emergency financial motion was withdrawn within 24 hours of Marcus delivering the account information to Jonathan Crenshaw. She'd moved the money thinking Rob wouldn't notice until after any initial court hearings, buying herself time to establish financial need. Instead, she'd handed him evidence of premeditation and financial manipulation. Rob's phone rang at 6 a.m. Lisa's voice was tight, with controlled fury. You had no right to freeze that account. That money is for Tyler's future. That money came from my business profits. Money I earned while believing I was supporting my family. Rob was already dressed and reviewing documents in his home office. If you want to discuss Tyler's financial future, we can do that through our attorneys. Rob, please. Can we just talk? Face to face, without lawyers. No. I'll do anything to fix this. Anything. You had 8 years to fix this, Lisa. You chose to lie instead. He hung up and called his private investigator. I need you to dig deeper into Lisa's background. Before we met, during college, everything. If she's lied about this, what else has she lied about? The answer came back within a week, delivered in a manila folder that fundamentally changed Rob's understanding of his wife. Lisa Thompson hadn't just been dating both Rob and David during their early relationship. She'd been engaged to another man, a medical student named Christopher Vale, who'd broken off their engagement when he'd discovered her infidelity. More damaging were the financial records from her previous relationships. Lisa had a pattern of extracting money from boyfriends through emergencies and investments that never materialized. Christopher had lost $12,000 to a fake business venture. A previous boyfriend had paid off her credit cards before discovering she'd maxed them out again within months. She's a professional, the investigator concluded during their meeting. Not quite a con artist, but close enough. She finds successful men, gets them emotionally invested, then bleeds them financially while maintaining the fiction of a loving relationship. Rob studied the photographs and documents spread across his conference table. What about David? David was different. She actually cared about him, near as I can tell. But he wasn't successful enough to give her the life she wanted. You were the stability she craved, but David was the passion she couldn't give up. So she decided to have both. Until David's conscience got the better of him. The suicide note mentioned his guilt about Tyler and his desire to confess everything. Lisa's last text to him was sent 3 hours before he died, threatening to disappear with Tyler if he contacted you. Rob felt a cold clarity settle over him. Lisa hadn't just betrayed their marriage. She'd driven David to his death to protect her secret. The gentle man who'd fathered Tyler had died believing he was protecting his son, never knowing he was really protecting Lisa's lie. That afternoon, Rob made a call to Jenny Sinclair. I'd like Tyler to meet his other family. David's parents, his aunts and uncles, everyone who loved David and never got the chance to know his son. Are you sure that's wise? Tyler's already confused. Tyler's going to need all the family he can get when this is over. Lisa won't be in a position to provide much stability. What do you mean? Rob chose his words carefully. Let's just say that Lisa's past is more complicated than she's led people to believe. Tyler's going to need people who actually care about his well-being, not their own interests. The family meeting was arranged for the following weekend at Jenny's house. David's parents, Carl and Margaret Thornton, drove up from Florida to meet their grandson. David's other sister, Patricia, brought her 2 children, Tyler's cousins. Rob watched from the kitchen window as Tyler played in the backyard with children who shared his father's features and mannerisms. Carl Thornton sat on the porch, his eyes never leaving his grandson, tears streaming down his weathered face. "He looks just like David at that age," Margaret whispered, standing beside Rob. "How could she keep him from us? How could she let David die thinking he had no family?" "Because family was never the point for Lisa," Rob replied. "Security was. David couldn't provide it. I could." She wanted the benefits of both relationships without the complications. Margaret turned to study him. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect? Someone angrier. Someone looking for revenge." Rob considered this. "I'm not angry anymore, Mrs. Thornton. Anger implies I still care about Lisa's choices. What I want now is justice. For yourself, for David, for Tyler, for all of us," she manipulated. That evening, after Tyler had reluctantly returned to Sandra's house, Rob sat with Jenny reviewing the legal strategy Marcus had developed. The custody case was becoming secondary to larger questions about fraud and emotional manipulation. "The court will want to know what's in Tyler's best interests," Jenny said, "not what punishes Lisa. Tyler's best interests include knowing the truth about his father and having access to his father's family. They include being raised by people who value honesty over convenience. They include financial security that doesn't depend on lies and manipulation." "And where do you fit into that picture?" Rob had been asking himself the same question for days. Tyler wasn't his biological son, but they'd shared 8 years of Little League games, bedtime stories, and fishing trips. The boy called him Dad with complete trust, unaware that his entire identity was built on deception. "I fit wherever Tyler needs me to fit," he said finally. "But not as Lisa's victim anymore. Not as the man too stupid to see what was happening in his own house." Jenny studied his face. "You care about him, Tyler. You really care about him. Tyler's the only innocent person in this entire mess. Whatever happens between Lisa and me, he doesn't deserve to pay the price for her choices. Then maybe there's hope for all of us." Rob looked out at the evening sky, considering the weeks ahead. Lisa thought she was fighting for custody of Tyler. What she didn't realize was that Rob was fighting for something much larger, the complete reconstruction of truth from the ashes of her lies. And in that fight, Rob Mitchell had never lost. Chapter 7. Truth and Consequences. The custody hearing began on a gray Monday morning in October, with Lisa dressed in conservative blue and Tyler waiting in the courthouse children's room, unaware that his future was being decided by strangers. Rob arrived alone, having declined Sandra's offer to testify on Lisa's behalf and Marcus's suggestion to bring character witnesses. "I don't need people to vouch for my character," he told Marcus. "I need the facts to speak for themselves." Jonathan Crenshaw opened with an emotional appeal about Tyler's need for stability and his bond with the only father he'd ever known. He painted Rob as a successful but cold businessman who was weaponizing an innocent child to punish an unfaithful wife. "Mr. Mitchell claims to love this child," Crenshaw argued. "Yet he's willing to destroy Tyler's security because his ego can't handle his wife's past mistakes. This isn't about Tyler's welfare. It's about revenge." Marcus's response was methodical and devastating. He presented 8 years of financial records showing Rob's investment in Tyler's education, healthcare, and activities. Bank statements proved Lisa had been systematically moving money into accounts she controlled, while David's secret payments revealed a parallel financial relationship she'd hidden from Rob. But the real bombshell came when Marcus introduced David's journals and Lisa's text messages, obtained through Jenny's cooperation as David's next of kin. "Your Honor, this case isn't about a simple affair. It's about systematic deception designed to defraud Mr. Mitchell of his time, money, and emotional investment while denying Tyler's biological father the right to know his son." Judge Helen Morrison, no relation to Father Morrison, studied the evidence with the careful attention Rob recognized from his own business negotiations. She was in her 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Thompson," she said, using Lisa's maiden name deliberately. You've testified that you believed Mr. Mitchell was Tyler's father. Yet these text messages to Mr. Thornton suggest otherwise. Can you explain the discrepancy? Lisa's composure cracked. I wasn't certain. The timing was close. I thought it was possible either man could be Tyler's father. But you never sought clarity through testing? I didn't want to disrupt Tyler's life. Or your marriage to Mr. Mitchell? Crenshaw objected, but the damage was done. Judge Morrison had seen through Lisa's carefully constructed narrative to the calculation beneath. The paternity results, delivered by court order, confirmed what everyone already knew. David Thornton was Tyler's biological father, with 99.7% certainty. Tyler shared no genetic relationship with Rob Mitchell. During the lunch recess, Rob stood in the courthouse corridor watching Tyler through the children's room window. The boy was coloring, his tongue poking out slightly as he concentrated, a habit Rob had found endearing for 8 years. Second thoughts? Marcus asked. No, but I want to talk to him before this goes any further. The conversation took place in Judge Morrison's chambers, with Tyler sitting in a chair that made him look even smaller than his 8 years. Rob knelt in front of him, meeting the boy's confused gaze. Tyler, do you remember Miss Jenny from the park? And her family? Tyler nodded. They have the same eyes as me. That's right. They're your biological family. Your real father was Jenny's brother, David. But you're my dad. The simple statement hit Rob harder than he'd expected. I've been your dad for 8 years, and I've loved every minute of it. But there are things about your family that I didn't know. Things your mother didn't tell me. Is that why Mom cries all the time now? Rob felt his resolve waver for just a moment. Lisa's tears might be genuine. Regret for the pain she'd caused. Fear for her future. Grief for the life she was losing. But they didn't change the fundamental facts. Your mother made some choices that hurt people. Good people who loved you. Now we have to figure out how to fix those mistakes. Are you going to stop being my dad? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Judge Morrison leaned forward slightly, her professional neutrality tinged with obvious concern for the child caught in adult complications. I'm always going to care about you, Tyler. But you have a whole family you've never met, grandparents and aunts and cousins who loved your father and want to love you too. They can give you things I can't. Like what? Like the truth about where you came from. Like stories about your real father and what kind of man he was. Like belonging to people who share your blood and your history. Tyler considered this with the seriousness that had always made him seem older than his years. Will I still see you sometimes? Rob looked at Judge Morrison, who nodded slightly. If that's what you want, and if it's what's best for you, then yes. I hope we'll always be friends. The afternoon session focused on future arrangements. Jenny Sinclair had petitioned for custody as Tyler's aunt and closest living relative from David's side. She'd also requested supervised visitation with David's parents and extended family. Lisa fought desperately, arguing that Tyler barely knew these people and that disrupting his life would cause psychological damage. But Crenshaw's earlier strategy had backfired. If Rob was too cold and calculating to be Tyler's father, what did that make Lisa, who'd orchestrated 8 years of deception? Judge Morrison's ruling was delivered with clinical precision. This court finds that Tyler's best interests are served by placement with his biological family, who can provide both stability and truthfulness about his identity. Ms. Thompson will have supervised visitation rights pending completion of a psychological evaluation and parenting classes. Lisa collapsed in her chair, the magnitude of her losses finally hitting her. She'd gambled everything on her ability to manipulate the situation and lost completely. But Rob wasn't finished. As court adjourned, he handed Marcus a final file. What's this? Insurance fraud. Lisa's been filing false claims on Tyler's medical expenses for 3 years, collecting money for procedures that were already covered by my company's health plan. She thought I'd never notice because I rarely checked the statements. Marcus stared at the documentation. Rob, this is criminal fraud. She could go to jail. People who betray trust should face consequences. All the consequences. What about Tyler? Rob watched through the courthouse window as Tyler walked hand in hand with Jenny toward her car. The boy looked back once, waving at Rob with a smile that didn't quite hide his confusion. Tyler will be fine. He'll have people who actually love him taking care of him. People who won't lie to him about who he is or where he comes from. Lisa appeared at his shoulder, her face streaked with tears. Rob, please, don't do this to Tyler. Don't take away his mother. I'm not taking away anything, Lisa. You gave it away years ago when you decided lies were more convenient than truth. I'm begging you. Rob turned to face her fully, his expression as cold as Arctic stone. You begged David not to tell me the truth, and he died carrying your secret. You begged me to attend his funeral, knowing what it might reveal. You've built your entire adult life on begging for things you haven't earned. I'm done being moved by your tears. He walked away without looking back, leaving Lisa standing in the courthouse corridor with nothing but the consequences of her choices for company. Justice, Rob reflected, was sometimes indistinguishable from revenge. The difference was whether you cared about the distinction. He didn't. Chapter 8. Ashes to Ashes. 6 months later, Rob stood in his empty house, watching the moving truck carry away the last of his furniture. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks earlier, with Lisa receiving exactly what she'd brought into the marriage, nothing. The insurance fraud charges had been reduced to restitution and community service, but her reputation was destroyed. No one in their social circle would speak to her, and Sandra had stopped taking her calls after Lisa asked to borrow money for the 3rd time. Tyler was thriving with Jenny and the Thornton family. The boy had adapted to his new life with the resilience children showed when adults finally stopped lying to them. He attended a new school closer to Jenny's house, played on a soccer team with his cousins, and spent weekends learning about his father through David's family stories. Rob still saw Tyler once a month, per the custody agreement. The visits were cordial but distant, not unfriendly, but lacking the easy intimacy they'd shared when Tyler believed Rob was his father. The boy was polite, grateful for the birthday gifts and Christmas presents, but his real affection was reserved for the family that shared his blood and his truth. It was exactly what Rob had wanted, which didn't make it less painful. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. New offer came in for the house. Above asking price, cash deal. You sure about this? Rob typed back, accepted. I'm done here. He was moving to Austin, where Mitchell Holdings was expanding into commercial development. A fresh start in a new city, away from the memories and the wreckage of his marriage. He'd kept the business, the investments, and his reputation intact. Lisa had lost everything except her freedom, and even that was constrained by debt and shame. By any objective measure, Rob had won completely. His doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. Tyler stood on the porch with Jenny, both dressed in their Sunday clothes. We brought you something, Tyler said, holding out a wrapped package. Rob invited them in, noticing how Tyler's eyes took in the empty rooms with 8-year-old curiosity rather than sadness. This house was part of his past now, not his present. The package contained a photo album, pictures from Tyler's 8 years that Jenny had copied from Lisa's collection. Tyler playing Little League, birthday parties, family vacations. Rob and Tyler building a tree house, teaching him to fish, working on homework at the kitchen table. Mom was going to throw these away, Tyler said matter-of-factly. Jenny said you might want them. Rob turned through the pages, seeing their life together through the lens of what he now knew. In every photo, Tyler looked happy, secure, loved. In every photo, Rob looked like a man who believed he was raising his son. Thank you, he said simply. Are you really moving to Texas? Tyler asked. I am. New job, new opportunities. Tyler nodded with the seriousness he'd inherited from David. Will you be happy there? The question caught Rob off guard. He'd been focused on winning, on justice, on consequences. Happiness hadn't figured into his calculations. I hope so. Good. You deserve to be happy. Tyler looked around the empty house one more time. This was a good place to grow up. After they left, Rob sat in his empty living room with the photo album, remembering Tyler's first steps in this hallway. Christmas mornings by the fireplace. Bedtime stories in the room upstairs that had been Tyler's sanctuary. None of it had been real. It had all been built on Lisa's lies and David's silence and his own willful blindness. But the love had been real, even if the foundation was false. His phone rang. Lisa's number appeared on the screen, the first time she'd called since the custody hearing. Hello, Lisa. I heard you're moving. Her voice was subdued, stripped of the manipulation and charm he'd once found attractive. News travels fast. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know. Rob considered the apology, weighing it against 8 years of deception and David's unnecessary death. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? A long pause. Both, I guess. But mostly sorry I hurt Tyler. And you. And David. Her voice broke slightly. God, Rob, David didn't have to die. If I'd just been honest from the beginning. But you weren't honest. You made choices, and David paid for them. Tyler paid for them. I paid for them. You're the only one who benefited, right up until the end. I know. I know that. I wanted you to know that I did love you. In my way, it wasn't all fake. Rob thought about this. Maybe Lisa had loved him, in whatever capacity she was capable of love. But love without truth was just another form of manipulation. Take care of yourself, Lisa. He hung up and deleted her number from his contacts. She would find her way or she wouldn't, but it was no longer his concern. The next morning, Rob loaded his car and began the drive to Austin. In his rearview mirror, the city that had been his home for 15 years gradually disappeared behind hills and distance. He'd built an empire here, fallen in love, raised a child, and discovered that everything he believed about his life was fiction. But he'd also learned that he was strong enough to survive the complete destruction of his world and methodical enough to rebuild it on his own terms. Lisa had taken 8 years of his life, but she hadn't broken him. She'd just taught him the price of trusting too easily. The road ahead stretched empty and full of possibility. Somewhere behind him, Tyler was learning about his real father from people who had actually known and loved David Thornton. Lisa was facing the consequences of her choices without the safety net of other people's money and affection. And Rob Mitchell was driving toward a future where he would never again mistake beautiful lies for inconvenient truths. The rearview mirror reflected a man who'd paid every debt and settled every score. That was enough victory for anyone. Chapter 9, New Foundations. 2 years later, Rob stood on the balcony of his Austin penthouse, overlooking Lady Bird Lake as the sun set behind the city skyline. Mitchell Holdings had expanded beyond his projections, with 3 major commercial developments reshaping downtown Austin. The business magazine interviews called him a visionary, but Rob knew the truth. He was just a man who'd learned to trust only what he could verify. His phone chimed with a text from Jenny. Tyler made honor roll again. He wanted you to know. Rob smiled, typing back. Tell him congratulations. Still on for his birthday visit next month? He's counting on it. Fair warning, he's gotten taller and louder. Tyler was 10 now, spending summers with Jenny and school years with David's parents in Florida, where they'd retired early to be closer to their grandson. The boy flourished in the Florida sun, playing baseball and making friends who knew him simply as Tyler Thornton, David's son. Rob had kept his promise about staying in Tyler's life, though their relationship had evolved into something more like a favorite uncle than father. Tyler was polite and affectionate during visits, but his real emotional bonds were with the Thornton family. It was healthier that way. No confusion about identity or loyalty, no lies about biology or history. The doorbell interrupted his thoughts. Rob wasn't expecting anyone, but his building's security was excellent. He opened the door to find a woman in her 30s with professional bearing and nervous energy. Mr. Mitchell? I'm Rebecca Walsh from the Chronicle. I was hoping to speak with you about the Lisa Thompson case. Rob's expression cooled. There is no Lisa Thompson case. The matter was resolved 2 years ago. Actually, there is. Ms. Thompson was arrested yesterday for fraud. Apparently, she's been running a similar scheme with other men. Fake pregnancies, financial manipulation, identity theft. The police think there might be additional victims going back years. Despite himself, Rob was intrigued. And you want what from me? Comment on her pattern of behavior. Insight into her methods. You were her most significant victim financially, and you're the only one who fought back successfully. Rob considered this. He'd moved on from Lisa's betrayal, built a new life, found a measure of peace. But if she was continuing to hurt people, come in. Let's talk. Rebecca's story was thorough and damning. After losing custody of Tyler and facing social ostracism, Lisa had moved to Dallas and immediately begun targeting successful men through dating apps and professional networking events. She'd refined her approach, learning from the mistakes that had exposed her to Rob. She got 2 men to pay for fake medical treatments, Rebecca explained, consulting her notes. Another one funded a business venture that never existed. She was engaged to a real estate developer when one of her earlier victims recognized her photo on social media. How many victims total? At least 8 that we can verify. The financial damage is close to $500,000. Rob felt a familiar cold satisfaction. Lisa had learned nothing from their confrontation except how to be a more efficient predator. But she'd also underestimated how small the world could be for someone leaving that many enemies in their wake. What do you need from me? The police want to understand her psychological profile. You lived with her for 8 years. You uncovered her deceptions. Your insights could help prevent future victims. Rob spent an hour detailing Lisa's methods, the way she mirrored her target's interests, the carefully crafted vulnerability that inspired protective instincts, the gradual financial requests that escalated once emotional bonds were established. He explained how she'd leveraged Tyler to maintain control over their relationship, using motherhood as both weapon and shield. She's not impulsive, he concluded. Every move is calculated. She studies her targets, finds their weaknesses, then exploits them systematically. The only reason she failed with me was arrogance. She thought I was too invested to walk away. And now she's facing federal fraud charges with multiple victims willing to testify. She's run out of new identities and fresh starts. The lies finally caught up with her. After Rebecca left, Rob called Marcus to discuss the legal implications. Lisa's new charges might affect Tyler's custody arrangement, though Jenny and the Thorntons had legal guardianship that couldn't be challenged by a convicted felon. Ironic, Marcus observed. She destroyed her life trying to avoid the consequences of her first deception, only to create worse consequences with her second. Lisa never understood that the truth has its own momentum. You can delay it, redirect it, hide from it for a while. But eventually, it finds its way to the surface. That night, Rob sat on his balcony reviewing quarterly reports and thinking about justice. Lisa was finally facing consequences that matched her crimes, not just for what she'd done to him and Tyler and David, but for a pattern of predatory behavior that stretched back years. He felt no satisfaction in her downfall, no sense of vindication or closure. Lisa Thompson had become irrelevant to his life the moment he'd walked out of that courthouse 2 years ago. Her current troubles were simply the inevitable result of choices she'd made long before and continued making long after their paths had diverged. His phone buzzed with another text from Tyler. "Jenny says you talked to a reporter about Mom. Are you okay?" Rob smiled at the boy's concern. Even at 10, Tyler understood that his biological mother's troubles might affect the people who cared about him. "I'm fine. Just helping make sure she can't hurt anyone else." "Good. Love you, Rob." "Love you too, kiddo." Rob finished his reports and went inside, glancing once at the photo album Tyler had given him 2 years earlier. The pictures showed a happy family built on lies, but they also showed love, imperfect, incomplete, but genuine. Tyler would grow up knowing the truth about his father, surrounded by people who chose honesty over convenience. Lisa would face the consequences of her choices in whatever prison housed white-collar criminals. David's memory had been honored by the family that knew and loved him, and Rob Mitchell had learned that some betrayals were too fundamental to forgive, but not too fundamental to survive. The city lights twinkled beyond his windows like distant stars, each one representing someone else's story of triumph or failure, love or loss. Rob had written his chapter of that larger narrative, and it had ended exactly as he'd planned, with truth triumphant and justice served. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something lasting on solid foundations. But tonight, he was content to sit in his quiet home, surrounded by success he'd earned honestly, planning a future no one could steal or destroy with lies. He'd won the only victory that mattered, the right to live according to his own truth.